Basic living costs such as transport, electricity and nutritious food are outstripping inflation in South Africa, and some households, especially those earning minimum wage, are simply not coping. Well, Velemseni Mthiyane joins us tonight to explain and verify why food prices remain high despite a low food inflation. It's over to you, Velemseni.
Good evening, Fundo. South Africa has enough food and numerous food programs, yet millions of people still go to bed hungry because food is simply not affordable to many. Food and non-alcoholic beverages have been the biggest contributor into the inflation over the past 5 years. Let's look at the graphics explaining further to this. Now, if we look in March 2023, it was a recent peak of food inflation where it was 14%, but it has somehow eased to 4.7% as of August 2024, as the statistics was released by the Stats SA yesterday. Now, if we look over the past 12 months, Mfundo, you will realize that on average, the food and non-alcoholic beverage inflation has been averaging 6.3% over the past 12 months, meaning from this August to last year's August. Now, if we look further as to what exactly contributes into the high inflation, the next graphic will show us what exactly is the major contributor. Now, if we look in terms of the food and non-alcoholic beverages, the solid dot there shows us that it over the past 5 years, from 2019 all the way to 2024, food and non-alcoholic beverages have contributed immensely into high food prices in South Africa. But where is this coming from? It's two issues, globally as well as domestically. If we look into the factors globally, there's the issue of the geopolitics instability. We will recall in February 2022 when Russia-Ukraine conflict started. Both countries are known to be the biggest producers of grain as well as fertilizer. And global food prices were affected when that conflict started because the export was affected from both countries. But also, when we look into the issue of climate change globally, we have seen droughts, we have seen heat waves, we have seen floods that have also resulted into crop failures. But also, domestically, the issue of load shedding. Currently, we are very happy. We're on the 177th day without load shedding. So somehow we hope that will reflect on the production costs of those who are in the food production businesses, but also the issue of logistics, fuel and transport. It has been a very thorny issue. If you see there, in the past 5 years, the issue of transport or the transport inflation has been far above normal CPI. And that tells us that if you combine that together with other factors locally, the issue of load shedding, they do drive domestic food prices very high. So that's where we are at the moment if we look. But experts will tell us later.
But what are, speaking of experts, what are economists and commentators saying? Because surely there should be some sort of a way to curb this inflation.
Well, what the economists are saying are that we should not hope for an immediate relief in terms of food prices going down because of the lower inflation. There are various reasons, and right now, to give us more information on that, we'll speak to the economist Velemseni Mthiyane. Velemseni, good evening. How are you?
Thanks, and viewers of SABC.
All right. Why a big drop in inflation has not led into an immediate reduction in food prices?
I think gradually we'll see that. It will be immediate when we will need to expect inflation. When you look at supply chain bottlenecks going down globally, and then you look at the international agricultural commodity prices as well going down that we have seen. So if we have spotted that, you will understand that these are input costs. So the input cost will start to show in the production market later, or a production inflation index will then change. It can be in 3 months. from now, but it's not something that we will just see it immediately, because the products that we're taking now are the ones that have been produced with the higher inflation. But gradually, we are expected to see that happening.
So from what you are saying, basically food prices will go down in about maybe 3 to 4 months from now, considering that the factors, the input factors in terms of production, which includes the lower cost of, say, transport and many other factors, they will be factored into the production in the next few months, therefore resulting into lower food prices domestically.
Yes, as like the input prices get lower, or raw materials get lower in prices internationally, we will start to see that. But at the same time, you remember when Donald Trump was still the president, OPEC went into dropping global production of oil. And when production of oil was cut down, it could probably as well make challenges in terms of the unforeseen like situations where the price of fuel became expensive because of, I think there is something that's wrong. Please, like there's some.
We can still hear you.
Okay. Yeah, global oil prices became higher as a result of the cut in global production of oil in the past, like I will say around 2018, 2019. And we did not really come back to balance that because COVID-19 started and supply chain started at the back of low production of oil. And then like when you look at that as well, like the wars has caused the global agricultural prices to be higher, or like I will say wheat prices went higher, and you look at wheat being part of the products that are consumed a lot globally. So you will expect as well retail prices or FMCG prices to be higher for consumers as a result of all those elements that are contributing factors to the production sector.
All right. Now, if maybe this is the second to last question. What should consumers do in the meantime? We heard that the repo rate has been cut by 25 basis points, and that gives a sort of a relief to the consumers, those who are having bonds and other loans which they are paying. But in terms of food cost at the moment, what should consumers do in the meantime before we see the real drop of food prices in the, as you are saying, in the next 3 to 4 months?
The consumers need to identify the baskets that they are supposed to use as families. So in multiple times, we find that consumers get to be picking things that could be staying in fridges or staying as like dry FMCGs longer, and they don't really need to use it instantly. So, but if consumers can learn how to select their family basket and then save cost from there, and as well get to be using the products in a better way. It's not really about using meat all the time, because like meat or beef is the most expensive element in the consumer basket. But we can look at identifying, the scenario of the former finance minister of advising the country to take Lucky Star or such types of products assist in lowering the baskets for families, or looking at reasonable products, in a basket that can be used for consumers to have an affordable basket, as opposed to be using probably meat-related products all the times, as that will be costly for them.
Well, thank you so much for your time. There was an economist, Velemseni Mthiyane. There you have it, that in the next 3 to 4 months, we should expect some food price reduction in terms of...
Which is quite heartening,
the
honestly.
factors of production that will come, the input factors that will come into the production of those food, and then therefore we should expect some rands and cents into the consumers' pockets.
No, that's honestly quite heartening. But on top of it as well, just that advice to perhaps for now, in the interim, choose for cheaper forms of protein. That perhaps the beef is not the option on that food basket, but maybe take, as he says, a little bit of tinned fish. But beyond this, I want us to be more granular, Veli, and just take us through this food basket. If we're looking at the actual food prices, how bad is the situation?
We all know that over 13 million people are food insecure, and this is highly likely to be exacerbated even further by the prolonged high food prices. But if we can take a look into Household Affordability Index of August 2022, the average cost of household food basket in the past 5 years, I'll compare two-year periods, which is 2019 as well as 2024, a 5-year period. You will see, Mfundo, that at 3,067 Rand 52 cents, there was an average cost of household food basket. But in 2024, that had grown with about 70% to about 5,227 and 14 cents. That's a whopping 70% increase of the average household food basket over the period of 5 years.
My goodness. And many consumers can attest to this. I'm sure today these are figures that many would agree with, because the rand doesn't go a long way anymore. You just go to the shops and then quickly you've had less items, but you've spent a lot more.
Absolutely. That's why the Reserve Bank Governor, Mr. Lesetja Kganyago, says inflation steals the consumer's money. Now, if we look at the average cost of the basic nutritious diet of a child, back in 2019, it was 590.64, and then in 2024, it's 939.63 cents. If you look into these two, compare these two, there's a growth of about 58% over the period of 5 years for a child to get a nutritious diet. Per child, 590, that was in 2019, but now it's 939 in 2024. But again, if we move further and we look into the average cost of basic nutritious diets for a family of 4 in this case, back in 2019, there was 2,318 rands and 97 cents. But now, if you look at the 2024, 5 years later, we are looking at 3,685 rands and 49 cents. Again, that's a massive jump in terms of prices, about also 60% or 59% or so in terms of price. But again, we know in South Africa, we measure food poverty. We have food poverty line, which is currently standing at 760. But if you look in 2019, it was at 561 rands. Now, Mfundo, you must understand that when you look into people who are mainly 13 million people in South Africa who are food insecure, they find it difficult to cope with these escalating cost of basic food items. Now, if we're to look into the, now we're getting onto granular details. Now we're looking in these items that we've picked, basic items. Back in 2019, a 10 kg Mfundo of maize meal was costing about 70 Rand and 78 cents. But now if you compare it to 25 years later, it's 101 rands and 49 cents. And then again, if you look in terms of, that's a basic, that almost, it's a basic stature, that necessity that everybody uses throughout the country. Now, if you look into another staple here, which is rice, a 10 kg was at 81 Rand 39 cents in August 2019, and that has escalated to 177 Rands and 44 cents.
That's a
10
huge
kg
leap.
That's a huge jump. Then I'll leave the other, but another point I want to pick up here is the issue of onions. We know in a 10 kg in August 2019, it was 52 Rand and 99 cents. It went all the way to 121 Rand and 48 cents over a 5-year period, Mfundo. But again, when we look into protein, beef, a 2 kg of beef in 2019, it was at 140 Rands and 99 cents, and now 5 years later, in August, it's 174 Rand and 78 cents. Again, cooking oil. If you look at the price of cooking oil, 5 litre of cooking oil in 5 years ago, 2019, August, it was 83 Rand 99 cents. But if you are looking into August 2024, it's 147 and 61 rands. So now you can see that between these 2 years, there is a growth of about 66% in terms of the total cost of all these food in terms of the sizes that they are. So from here to here, it's about 66% increase in terms of the cost of these basic food items.
But the biggest problem is that we haven't seen a proportionate increase in income in most of these households, because they say there is some disconnect. You're seeing this gradual increase over the past 5 years, but have you seen an increase in the household income? It seems it's not the case.
Even worse, because during COVID-19, some people were forced to take pay cuts.
Yeah.
And then other people have not been able to get increases. So that also puts a strain on the convert. On top of that, the issue of the escalating interest rates that have gone up since November 2021 all the way to May 2023 with about 475 basis points. At least now there is a little bit of a reprieve when the interest rate was cut with about 25 basis points. And that for a 1 million rand bond at a repayment of about a prime lending rate, there is a saving of about 173 rands as from tomorrow. Those who are paying bonds, and they are having a 1 million rand bond, but they are paying at a prime lending rate, which is currently now at 11.5%.
Veli, thank you very much for explaining and verifying. That's my colleague Velemseni there on Explain and Verify. More news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us.